Welcome to Fireside Giants. My name is Alex, my co-host here, Anthony Rivardo. Today, we're diving into an interesting topic involving draft capital and how what the Giants did this offseason, and really this draft, was so important for setting themselves up for the future for a variety of reasons, ranging from Daniel Jones to maybe going out and getting a star pass rusher. And what did Chris Pettit, the head director of player personnel, what did he have to say about this, and why is, the draft capital that much more important because of what the Giants did this offseason in free agency? All of these things play a big part in their future. Of course, we all hope the Giants win the Super Bowl next year, but the reality is probably unlikely. We want to take a step forward to the playoffs. We want to make some noise in the playoffs and then come back next season even stronger and, really show some positive growth here. And we have a good strategy. We have a good reason to be optimistic for you guys. And I think it's going to kind of brew some positivity for the future. And I'm excited about that, Anthony. Before we dive into that good stuff, my friend, how are you doing today?
I'm doing real good, and of course, Dave Gettleman finally did what we never expected him to do and traded down in this year's NFL draft and gained some draft capital for next year. He traded down twice. He ended up getting a first-round pick next year, I believe a fifth-round pick next year, and a third-round pick next year. So the Giants are loaded up on draft capital, have so much flexibility, and a lot of insurance in next year's draft. We'll see how the Giants do this upcoming season. Clearly, us as fans, we've set the expectations pretty high. The bar is pretty high for Joe Judge and the rest of the squad. We think that there's going to be some big jump this year and that they should be a playoff team. But you really never know. The NFL is just there's so much uncertainty year to year with every single team. You can never count on any team that made the playoffs to make it again. Any injury or coaching change, anything can make a huge drastic change to a team and make a big difference and cause them to not have the season you expect. So while we expect the Giants to be a good, hopefully playoff team this year, there's always a chance that they bottom out, or there's a chance that they win the Super Bowl. You never know. But either way, now that we have all this extra draft capital next year, we're set up in a perfect position long term. We can move around, be flexible, move up in the draft, move down again in the draft, get enough players to fill out this roster and really build out a championship contender for the long term. And I think that's super exciting, especially when you look at what Chris Pettit has to say about all that, and you look at this upcoming season, you look at this young team that we have, and you say, this is an exciting squad that we're building, and considering all of the draft capital we have, it's only going to get younger, and it's only going to get better. And I think the future is really bright with the Giants, so I'm excited to discuss this, and really excited to see as this future, as we go down this future path, how it all unravels, and how the Giants really build this thing out, and what we exactly turn into.
Yeah, well, when you talk about defense, there's a number one thing that comes to mind really for any given team, and that is getting a premier pass rusher, right? The Giants went out and not only got their guy Azeez Ojulari, but they got him at 50, right? Azeez Ojulari was a guy that the Giants were connected to at 11, 2 weeks prior to the draft. Anthony, we spoke about this extensively. Azeez Ojulari is an option for the Giants at 11. They got him at 50. Just start to comprehend how insane that really is and the value they gained, because they were going to take him at 40. Instead, they said, nah, let's get another third-round pick out of this and get him at 50. They got their guy plus a third-round pick, plus Kadarius Toney, plus a first-round pick. They got so much draft value from making these decisions, and it really involved a little bit of luck because they needed some guys to fall. They needed some teams to need guys like Justin Fields, like Chicago. And really, think about what the Giants could have next season. If Chicago struggles, which I imagine they will with a rookie quarterback and Andy Dalton, we know Dalton thinks he's getting starting reps. He's going to have to battle it out with Justin Fields for the starting job. And there's no doubt in my mind that Fields is going to have issues week one, right? And for probably his entire rookie season, because he is, went to Ohio State. He did have a good college career, but he is very raw in some aspects of his game. He lacks decision-making. He is not the best with accuracy at times. His deep ball, he overthrows it, underthrows it. There's a lot of parts of his game that are in need of, I guess, upgrades and just development, really. So this Chicago pick could either be a 20s pick or it could be a top 10 pick, right? Now, what does that top 10 pick represent? The one player that comes to mind is Oregon's Kayvon Thibodeau. There's a couple of other options. Of course, this plays into if Daniel Jones ends up panning out, if he falters, and the Giants need to supplement him in whatever way. Hope to God, knock on wood, that he is our guy. But on the off chance that he isn't, we have the draft capital to go and get a quarterback and really create some sort of competition battle moving forward. But in a perfect world, DJ pans out, and we look at a guy like Kayvon Thibodeau to come into this team and pair with Azeez Ojulari as an outside linebacker. Now, Kayvon Thibodeau is a beast If you've ever watched him, he only had 3 sacks last year, but teams and opposing coordinators and quarterbacks avoid him at all costs. They don't run his way. They don't throw the ball near him. They basically are like, we are going to do whatever we can to attack everybody else on the field but Kayvon Thibodeau. The guy is an absolute monster. He's an athletic specimen. He's fast. He's strong. And he's only like 21. The kid's still growing. So he actually might be younger than that. So when I'm looking at this Giants draft class and I'm looking at Chicago's pick, which could be a top 10 selection, Kayvon Thibodeau, top pass rusher, he's arguably at that Chase Young level, what they're expecting him to be at least, at that Chase Young level of hype when it comes to pass rushers. You could trade up, use that other first-round pick, go get yourself one of the best pass-rushing prospects that have been available in the past couple of years, especially as an outside linebacker, which fits the Giants scheme to perfection. That is where he makes a lot of sense. He's not a Chase Young. He's not a defensive end. He is an outside linebacker with the athleticism to drop back into coverage and do a lot of different things for Patrick Graham's unit. Pairing him with Azeez Ojulari, who will then have a year of experience under his belt. Leonard Williams is under contract. Dexter Lawrence is under contract. You're looking at potentially one of the best defensive lines in football. That is what I picture in my head, but that is a product of smart decisions, smart decision-making from Gettleman, the front office, Chris Pettit. And Chris Pettit said this in terms of, what they added this year and how valuable it is. He says, to be honest with you, it makes it fun knowing that we have all these opportunities to take players next year. So I'm looking forward to it. With a big class, it's going to be a lot of work for us. Our scouts are going to have to be as thorough as ever and start work earlier with such a big class and guys moving all around. We know that, and we are ready to take on the challenge, but now at least we have the picks to hit it out of the park next year, again, hopefully. Now, why are these picks so valuable? Because the Giants spent over $150 million in free agency this past offseason. So what does that mean for the Giants next year? They're not going to have much money, right? They have a couple players coming off the books. Maybe Nate Solder will come off the books. Maybe they trade Sterling Shepard. They open up a couple dollars. But the big contracts for Kenny Golladay and Leonard Williams really only come into effect next season because they really lowered the cap hit this year so they could fit those contracts and figure it out next year. Those draft picks are going to be that much more important, and we might not have enough money to host 2 first-round picks. They might look to take those first-round picks, package them together, move up in the draft, get your best player available, and then pay him adequately instead of having 2 first-rounders, which you have to pay $7-8 million plus for, depending on where the Giants land in this upcoming draft. But Anthony, when you're looking at this, the value it brings, do you think that this next draft class is going to be that important? Do you think that, what kind of scenarios in your mind are you conjuring up that represent positives? What did they set themselves up for in terms of replacing DJ if need be, knock on wood again? Or what kind of players are you looking at and saying, if we need a new offensive tackle, a new offensive guard, a pass rusher, who stands out?
Yeah, I'll start off the bat. I think everybody who's been a long-term listener of this podcast or viewer of this YouTube channel knows I'm super high on Azeez Ojulari. I lost my mind when they got him at 50 overall because I did 1 week earlier a film breakdown on Azeez Ojulari saying that if they take him at 11, I'm happy with it. And I know there was a lot of buzz that they might just take him at 11. So that's why I made the video. And I was like, a lot of fans are saying he's not worth that price tag. Ultimately, you guys might have been right because he went in the second round, but he still landed with the Giants, and he still is a player that a lot of people had as a top 15 talent. So I'm super excited by the fact that he's on the team. But this draft capital does give the Giants an opportunity to capitalize on next year's strong edge rusher class. There's a couple of guys right at the top. Kayvon Thibodeau out of Oregon, and then there's also Nick Bonito out of Oklahoma. Those 2 guys, Pro Football Focus is in love with Bonito, and most of the NFL scouts are in love with Kayvon Thibodeau right now. But both of those guys are going to be probably top 10 picks, and they're really, really talented edge rushers. So if Azeez Ojulari is a good but not, elite player off the bat, you can pair him with another young stud edge rusher like Bonito, like Thibodeau at the beginning of next year's draft if you can trade up and grab one of them because they're going to go high, but you never know. Maybe the Bears have a horrible season. Their pick ends up being a top 10. That would be huge for us. But even if not, say we have 2 top 20 picks, let's say 25 and 22. You can package both of those, maybe get up to the top 10, and then you get your edge rusher right there. That would be huge and exciting for the Giants. And then maybe you're talking about building an elite edge rusher duo long term in Azeez and whichever guy you get next year. But then, of course, it also does allow you to say, all right, maybe, Shane Lemieux doesn't pan out this upcoming season. Let's go get the best guard in the draft next year. Or let's say Matt Parrott, I'm wrong about him and he doesn't have a great year. Let's go find this new tackle in the beginning of the first round. You've got this flexibility now to just move up and get your guy, which is something the Giants haven't had in a very long time. Oftentimes, we've been sitting in that 4 to 6 to 10 range in the draft picks where you're kind of like, damn, I wish we could move up and get our guy, but we're not quite there with the other draft capital that we have. But it might be beneficial to trade down like the Giants recognized this past season when they were picking at 11. And then, of course, final thing, of these three things I mentioned is the insurance that you get at the quarterback position by having 2 draft picks. I'm a huge Daniel Jones believer. Alex is also a huge Daniel Jones believer. We think that year 3 is the year that Daniel Jones puts it all together and has a breakout year and establishes himself as a franchise quarterback. But that's just what we think. That's not what we know. So what if that doesn't happen? What if he bottoms out this upcoming year? What if Danny Dimes turns into Danny Pennies and he doesn't have a good season at all? Yes, I am knocking on wood. I promise after we finish this episode, I'm going to run over there to the wood that's in my room in this cabinet, and I'm going to bang on it several times, knock on wood.
With your hammer?
But... yeah, with the hammer. With my Joe Judge's gavel. Actually, I got some wood right here. There you go. I knocked on wood. Perfect. But, this upcoming year, let's say that Danny Dimes doesn't pan out. Danny Pennies is the reality. We need to find a new quarterback. The Giants have a really good roster around Daniel Jones. There's a lot of talent on this defense, and now there's a lot of talent in the offensive playmaker department as well. So what is all of that without a good quarterback? It's nothing. You need a quarterback in the NFL, a really good quarterback, to make it deep into the playoffs and hopefully win a Super Bowl. So if Daniel Jones is not the answer, well, now the Giants have 2 first-round picks, and oftentimes the price tag to move up and draft a quarterback is 2 to 3 first-round picks. The Giants now have the draft capital necessary to move up and draft a quarterback if they need to. Not saying they'll need to, and I really hope they don't need to, but if they do, now they have the ability to, which is huge for us. I think it was a really smart long-term move by the Giants front office just to give themselves that insurance next season. There's a couple good quarterbacks coming out next year as well. I know a lot of fans are split on Spencer Rattler. I mean, he's kind of like that polarizing prospect this year. We'll see how he does this upcoming season. But Sam Howell out of UNC, I know a lot of people, and that, again, like kind of polarizing, but a lot of people are reminded by Baker Mayfield of him, and he's got a cannon. He throws some deep dimes. I actually am a fan of Howell, but we'll just see how this upcoming college football season goes. Every year there's a surprise quarterback prospect that just does an amazing job and shoots up draft boards. Zach Wilson this past season, Joe Burrow the season before that, who went number 1 overall and number 2 for Zach Wilson. So got to keep all that in mind. If the Giants just don't get the answer that they need from the quarterback position this upcoming year, they have the insurance now to go up there next season, reboot without costing them too much, go ahead and just inject a new quarterback into a really solid foundation of a team, and then just go on to the future with a brighter future if Daniel Jones isn't the answer. But personally, like I said, I think he is the answer, and that just means that these extra draft picks that we have next year just going to be used to build around Daniel Jones even more, give him an even better team around him, give him every luxury that he needs to take us to the Super Bowl at some point. That's what I see in the future, and that's why, man, all of these extra draft picks that we have, super, super exciting. Love the insurance, love the flexibility, and just see a super bright future for a young, great New York football team.
Yeah, you know what? I think that we have been kind of spoiled with the luxury of Eli Manning over the past, decade more, 15 years, in that we don't really understand what it means to have patience for a young quarterback to take that step forward, right? Everybody wants that Pat Mahomes. Everybody wants the Lamar Jackson that comes in and completely revolutionizes your franchise overnight. The chances of actually hitting on a quarterback who does that are so low, especially when your team does absolutely nothing to help them, right? Think about what Lamar Jackson had, a great running game, a great offensive line, and a great coaching staff. Think about what Pat Mahomes had. He had Tyreek Hill, a solid offensive line. He had Andy Reid. He had Brett Benamy. He had some of the best coaches, some of the best players in the league to help him succeed. What did Daniel Jones have besides undrafted free agents and Austin Mack, Jonathan Hilliman? And no offense to them, it's just not exactly what you want your young quarterback to come in and enjoy in his first season. Of course, Saquon Barkley, hooray, injured both seasons. You know what I mean? Daniel Jones wasn't given a fair chance from the get-go. The offensive line ranked in the bottom 5 in pass blocking in both seasons. Like, how are we supposed to expect a quarterback to take a developmental step when that's what we're offering him? Now the Giants have finally found a good blend of hitting on free agents and hitting on draft prospects. Now, there has to be an equality there because we saw in the past when the Giants did well in free agency, they absolutely muffed the draft. Remember when we went in that $100 million spending spree, $200 million spending spree, when Ross is trying to save his job, he goes out and gets Olivier Vernon, Janoris Jenkins, Snacks, and we're like, damn, you did a good job. You brought in some great players. But then the offense struggled, and that really is what happened Of course, the boat trip happened. I thought that team had a chance, but our tackles were Bobby Hart and Eric Flowers that year. What were we expecting? They whiffed on draft prospects. At essential positions, you need to have good tackles in the NFL to be a good team. You're a quarterback. Think about what happened to Patrick Mahomes in the Super Bowl. When you don't have good tackles, you get absolutely screwed. And I think the Giants are now finally figuring out, and the upper management's figuring out how to put together a good team in terms of hitting on free agency as well as hitting in the draft. Now, there has to be, of course, like I've mentioned multiple times now, has to be equality there when you're doing both efficiently. That is when a good team is produced. The Giants have now hit on a good free agents with Blake Martinez, James Bradbury, Graham Gano, hopefully Kenny Galladay, hopefully Fadio Denebo, hopefully a bunch of these other complementary pieces. And then, of course, you have the draft, where last year looked a lot better, in my opinion. I think Andrew Thomas is gonna have a good career. I think he's gonna take a big step next year. And a major part of that is because they were not given a preseason. They were not given time to have face-to-face interactions with the coaching staff. The entire draft was virtual for the most part. This was just the reality of the past year and a half, and the Giants emerged a better team. Think about how much better they would have been if it was a regular season, right? If it was a regular offseason, the Giants went from an absolute joke to having some respect. They took a positive step when most teams took a step backward because of COVID. And I think that is something to be very much aware of and very much respect and appreciate that this front office did, because a lot of hard work went into that behind the scenes. And I think that this modernized approach where we packaged, I guess not packaged, rather gained draft capital for the future is going to prove to be one of the biggest turning points in terms of strategy and, just philosophy that this team has experienced in a very, very long time. We've been going at the speed of a sloth in terms of modernizing our approach to the game, modernizing our philosophy towards drafting. We've been focusing way too much on running the football when the NFL's become a passing league. We've been focusing way too much on not using analytics when the rest of the league is using analytics and making it to the Super Bowl. You know what I mean? Like, that is the reality of the game, and the Giants are finally modernizing. Look at their freaking media staff now. Like, even their social media is modernized. I haven't seen as many TikToks in my life than I have in the Giants media account in the past couple of weeks. You know what I mean? So, like, the fan fest, they're getting Eli Manning involved. They're doing short little clips. They're making cool stuff. That shows me that they've changed. They've turned a page. Just that portion of their organization, the media portion, going more modern, shows me that they've obviously adapted to the modernized level of this NFL and this league. So really exciting stuff, Anthony. Do you have any last things to touch here? I've said a lot because I really am excited about the future of this team, and I think that we are taking big steps forward. But what do you think, man? I imagine you have a couple thoughts on your mind.
Yeah, I do. And just in terms of what you're talking about with the modernization of the New York Giants, I have to give a lot of credit to Dave Gettleman. We all thought he was a Dave Dinosaur Gettleman for so long, but this past year, he really changed his tune, and he really revolutionized. Yeah, Dino Dave. He really revolutionized the way that he goes about building this football team. It used to be stop the run and run the football. Then this past year, this offseason, when he said it's a passing league, I swear a tear just started rolling down my cheek. I was so happy to hear him say that. It blew my mind. And then, of course, to see him do what no one thought he would do, trade down in the draft. These are the things that analytics say to do. Focus on passing the football and focus on trading down in the draft. Those are the two things that create a ton of success for an NFL team in the modern day, according to the analytics. And Dave Gettleman used to make fun of the analytics guys, the computer folks in the back, but then they went ahead and hired guys like Russ Callaway, an analytics guy on the coaching staff, and a couple other guys in the front office, and they clearly started focusing on analytics. And, Dave Gettleman just shifted the way that he builds this team, and now it's really looking like a bright future ahead for the Giants, a more modern, progressive mindset for this team, kind of more in line with a team like Kansas City and the way that they built things out. A lot of people give the Miami Dolphins a ton of praise for the way that they've started to build out their team the past few years. And honestly, the Giants are following suit. Like, they're following in the footsteps of what Miami's been doing the past few years. And of course, a lot of teams look at the Indianapolis Colts as well, with the way that they traded down and just rebuilt their team overnight with that one trade down that they made in 2018 NFL draft. They drafted 2 all-pro players with 2 of those picks that they got in that trade down, rebuilt their team overnight. Now the Giants are kind of starting to look at that and say, maybe we can do something similar to that going forward and start building this modern approach. And I think that's just so exciting to see. So again, ton of credit has to be given to Dave Gettleman and the way that he really has reinvented himself here. You know, he's a guy that people were ranking as the worst NFL GM in the entire league. Now people are saying these last two off seasons look like an absolute home run, grand slam both years from Dave Gettleman, and you can't deny it. So he's really changed and he's really improved as a general manager, and for that the Giants are improving, and for that our future looks a lot brighter than it did 2 seasons ago. So, you know, a lot of credit to Dave Gettleman. I've been a huge critic of him in the past, but I just got to take my hat off. Won't do it literally because I have terrible hat hair right now, but hats off to Dave Gettleman, and I'm excited to see what he does in the future for the Giants as well, because he's done a great job these past 2 years, and I'm excited to see if he can keep that up and if he can hopefully prove all the doubters wrong and lift the Lombardi Trophy with the New York Giants.
Seriously, man. Dave Gettleman took one of the biggest turns I've ever seen. You know, going from his former philosophy of running, stopping the run, like you mentioned before, to now adapting to this pass happy league. And even Nick Saban, I think he started to like realize that everybody was saying the opposite of what he was saying. Like Nick Saban even said a couple of weeks ago, or months ago rather, he was like, the NFL is becoming a passing league. You need to outscore your opponents. Everyone's starting to say it. The people he respects starting to say it. Joe Judge's mentors, and Judge is probably like, Dave, I think we have to talk. And I think they are very connected in a good way. I think they're very much in line with each other. And that is what makes a good team. Good chemistry between a head coach and a general manager. Now, of course, when the owner gets a little too involved, that's when things get a little bit spotty. But I think John Mara finally realized he needs to take a step back and let his guys do the job. Because look at Philadelphia. I just read something that said their players are coming out saying that they don't think the new head coach is very good. They don't think he's going to be very good. They think that Howie Roseman actually went out and signed and hired this guy because he's a yes man. And Howie, Doug Peterson rather, he was fired because he had differing opinions and differing ideologies on where this team should go. Now, that is why I believe the Eagles are going to fall into a crumble of ashes. I'm going to clap all the way. I'm going to watch as, that little, instead of a phoenix coming out of the ground, it's going to be a pile of shit just festering, and that's what I want to see. And I think that's what's going to happen, because if you saw the head coach, apparently he thinks gauging competitiveness from rock, paper, scissors, shoot is something that is worth considering. I'll tell you what, that does not say much to me, but apparently that is a way of gauging your competitive spirit. Nonetheless, Giants are in a much better place. We have a lot of new weapons on this offense. The draft capital is bursting at the seams. I haven't seen this much draft capital since I don't even know when. Since I saw Seattle trade back every single year. You know what I mean? Like, this is an opportunity for the Giants. They didn't just get Chicago's pick. They got a potential top 10 pick, because Chicago is not going to be that good this year, in my opinion. They very well could be, but I don't think they will be, based on their quarterback situation. So, very much a positive spin on this team. We're remaining positive. As you guys know, we are Giants fans. We like to be unbiased, and I know a lot of people don't like that. But for the most part, I think this episode was really just meant to spur some hope and some positivity for this squad and this organization, who has taken a tremendous step forward in their philosophy. So, guys, thank you so much for tuning into Fireside Giants today, hanging out with us while we talk about the future of this team and the draft capital we have acquired. Make sure to subscribe below on YouTube. Notifications on Apple, Spotify, YouTube as well. And we will catch you guys on the next video.